Hello. So we're back. We're going to be working in Fusion. That's how I did my comp. I'm going to run you through the very basics of how these projects work. We're going to go over LUTs, OCIO color space, two ways of viewing things, and we're going to go through plugins. We're going to go through creating nodes. So as you see here, I already have a whole bunch of different nodes here and there. But we're going to start with color space and LUTs. So inherently, if you bring in an EXR, which is, I don't know if you can see, that's what this is. It's an EXR. This controls LUTs. This controls lookup table. So it helps us see it in the way that it's accurately supposed to be seen, because this is too crunchy. This is not how it looked for us in Blender at all, right? So we need a LUT just so when we're viewing it here, we can actually see it the way it's supposed to be seen. So I choose OCIO display. I go to edit. I can load in a config file. So Blender's kind of neat because it has, let me select all this so I can show you. So following this path, if you go into Blender, this is 4.2, but it'll work with any of the Blenders. You go into, I'll show you. You go in, you see your executable for Blender 4.2, data files, color management. You'll see a config, OCIO. You'll see LUTs in here, but I don't know how to load those into Fusion. But the OCIO works perfectly fine. So you would load it into here, Then you can select your color space, display, which is probably going to be sRGB based on how monitors tend to work, and the view. And this is what is coming out of Blender. I used AGX. I didn't use Filmic because, I don't think anyone really uses Filmic anymore. And everything else you leave the same. So now you're getting a comparable view to what you would see in Blender. But when you go to export it, even with this on, it's going to come out looking like this. So to avoid that, we have what's called an OCIO color space node. We can make nodes by control space and searching for OCIO color space, right? So we can find it there. If we wanted to, we could also right click and go to add tool and say, okay, I want to, where would it be? You see why I prefer control space, or if you're on Mac, command space, because you have to now come in here and look and see if you can find, I think maybe it's in color. There we go, yeah. OCIO color space. You click on it, it makes the node. You can do this also by looking up here. There are some of the most common, like color corrector, color curves, brightness, contrast, blur. So if I wanted to make a brightness contrast, let me turn this on, right? And then holding down Shift while I drag over. Now it's connected automatically. If I want to remove it again, just grab it and grab Shift, hold down Shift, it'll disconnect. So, but I can play with the gain, I can play with the lift, gamma, all that kind of stuff. So that was a control delete, by the way. Control delete, if I just do delete, actually delete works. Oh, very nice. Yeah, great. Okay. Yeah, so you can just hit delete and it'll delete those nodes in between. So, back to the color space. What we're going to want to do is pretty much what we did in the LUT menu. Grab that path, pick our source, Linear Rec 709 for me, sRGB, and this gives us all of the settings. So I guess I would just pick AGX, base contrast. Let's see if I hide that. Turn on the LUT. Now you got to be careful because in the view, they'll stack. So why not just use this at the very end? Well, for me, I prefer to use a LUT because, say for example, I've split this out. I've split this out into its passes, and I want to see what the color of each pass is, because it's not looking accurate, I would either have to copy and paste this after every split out version, every split out pass. Great. So I just stick with using a LUT, and then at the very end I activate this. It's the D key, by the way, and then I can get my, saver, which will export it out to a file, and I'd render it out. But that's later on in the process, yeah? So now we have our color space set up. I'm going to hide that by hitting D, just so I can keep using the LUT and just, have that, deal with that. So what else? Plugins. We want to make sure that we have our plugins. Open Reactor. Reactor is something made by the wonderful folks, I believe they are over at We Suck Less, steakunderwater.com. They have forums. They discuss different things. They have, let's see if I can find it. Macros are what they call their plugins. So there's a lot of different really cool things in here. If you're looking for information or help, I would definitely suggest joining this forum and reading a bunch of articles. Of course, Fusion has their manual. It's great. I've used it to learn a ton of things that I wasn't aware of myself. But moving back to the subject at hand. So you can select and install. You see the install button. It's grayed out because I have nothing selected, but if it was, for example, this, I can hit install if I wanted this. Two things that I have. Split EXR. This is great because if you have an EXR where you have multiple passes, you can split them out into your ID, your this, your that, and this will do it automatically. And we'll look into that as well. So we download this one for sure. And the other one that I would highly recommend is Nuke to Fusion, especially if you're coming from Fusion. Because there are some things that Fusion does that Nuke does in a different way. And so if you're looking for a very specific workflow, a very specific thing, you'll be like, wait, where is this? But yeah, Nuke to Fusion is pretty good if you're coming over, because a lot of the short keys will give you comparable nodes. And so it's good to have. I personally really enjoyed it. It really helped me to transition over. So, yeah. So that's our starting out. You have some, as I mentioned before, I think, you have, based on these are particles. These are for the 3D view. These are for masks. You can, grab them and create nodes for masks. These are transform, merges, all these things. So some of the most common ones that you'll find yourself using can be found up here. So you don't have to right-click, go to Add Tools. You don't have to do Control Space. If you know what the icon is, you can just select it from here and use it. So yeah, that's our kind of our intro video. In the next one, we'll go through a couple more options as far as how do we connect EXRs together. We're going to be going into connecting passes and manipulating the passes. All right. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope this helps. Take care.